Depending on who you ask, between 50 and 70% of all CRM implementations fail. I'm Tony Dowling, and I specialize in helping companies close the HubSpot adoption gap. That means helping them to buy HubSpot and then use it successfully in their business. If you want to learn more about our services, what we do and how we can help, have a look at the link in the description of the video. If you're wondering why, after you've spent a fortune on HubSpot, on onboarding, on training, implementation work, why nobody in your business actually uses it, you've come to the right place. If you don't get the adoption gap closed and you don't do that bit correctly, you're going to suffer from what we call HubSpot decay. That is the gradual decline of HubSpot and its usefulness in your business. People often default back to the way they did things before HubSpot. It's just easier and quicker to do things that way. But these gaps are caused by a number of factors. There's often a clarity around HubSpot and why your business wants to use it. There's a lack of training, and most importantly, because management don't use HubSpot to plan, measure, track their strategy in HubSpot, people just don't feel that it's that important. Neither does management. This leads to that downward spiral. Processes aren't followed, data decays, it becomes untrustworthy, unreliable, out of date. The whole thing becomes a pain to use, so people don't use it. Let me know in the comments of the video if you recognize any of these issues with your HubSpot. We work with our clients to create a plan to overcome this adoption gap. But it's really important that the adoption gap plan is yours, not ours. And it's really important that the adoption gap is the first thing you plan to close before you do the rest of the work in your HubSpot portal. It's really hard to rescue a portal that's already started to fail and has a bad reputation in the business. If you design the plan and own the plan, then it's far more likely that it'll succeed. Don't fall for one off the shelf or from a HubSpot partner or one you read in a book. You need to build it from the ground up. But that's what we can do. We can help you do that, we can help you implement it, and we can help you optimize it as the plan runs on. So let's talk a little bit about closing the adoption gap itself. What does it mean? Let's start with where you want to be. What does the future look like? What does success in the business look like? What sort of measures will you be achieving when you get to the place that you want to be? Try and flesh out this picture of the future as much as you can. What KPIs will you be measuring? What KPIs would you be hitting? What numbers will you be doing? Maybe there'll be more people needed in the business to achieve the things you want to achieve. Maybe you'll be in different markets. Maybe you'll launch new products. Map it all down. Have a look at exactly what you think the future is going to bring. How much revenue will you be generating? How much profit will you be generating? Those sorts of things. They really help to flesh out this future picture. What are measurements telling us about now? How are we performing? Do we even have measurements for some of those things? It's likely the things that we'll be measuring in the future aren't being measured now. Now, the most important thing is to ask ourselves the question, how do we close the gap? How do we close the gap from where we are to where we want to be? This is what we call closing the adoption gap, and this is what we help businesses use HubSpot to do. If you're not using HubSpot to close the adoption gap, to grow your business, then you need to ask yourself why you're using it in the first place. But what does this process actually look like in HubSpot? We all know about planning and strategy, but how do we use HubSpot to help us implement it? Here's an example of how that process might work. Let's say in order to transition, in order to close the gap, we want to increase our revenue by 100%. This is a huge goal, obviously a hard goal to do, but we're going to break it down into bite-sized pieces. We do the strategy sessions, we have a lot of thinking, a lot of back and forth, talking to our sales teams, maybe measuring the marketplace and doing our analysis and so on, but we come up with our plan, okay? And let's say the plan is to improve our call rates, improve our conversion ratios, and to speed up our sales process. Those are the steps of the plan that are going to help us get to the 100%. You probably have more, but just for the illustration, we'll pick those three measures. So each of those plans have supporting materials built into HubSpot. We have playbooks, we have coaching playlists, we use documents and sequences to help us achieve those goals in HubSpot. We can use HubSpot Academy's own resources or outside resources from something like our Super Sidekick, which will help train the teams in the skills they need in order to achieve those improved call rates, improve conversion rates, and to speed up their sales processes. We can use other tools within HubSpot, like the sequences or Breeze Intelligence, to help speed up the processes. In this way, we're supporting the strategy inside HubSpot itself. Now, most importantly, we create goals in HubSpot that represent the objectives, so the measures that we're going to follow in order to see that the goals are being achieved. They are in HubSpot as well. So now we've got the goals, we've got how to achieve them, and we've got the measures that show that we're hitting them right there in HubSpot. This is how we create the feedback loop or the control loop that helps management, helps the business achieve those objectives. We know what we're trying to achieve, we see how well we're doing it, and then we can act accordingly, either to pile on pressure and do more, or to change, to adjust, or to adapt the thing that we're doing to get closer to where we want to be. And of course, you can use the same process on as many of these objectives as you want. We wouldn't go too far necessarily. Maybe 4 or 5 strategic aims would be sufficient, but we are using HubSpot, as we've said, to not generate our strategy. We use the normal methodology to do that, but to build our strategy into HubSpot, to support its execution with training materials, and to see and control its execution by using the metrics and the KPIs to understand how well we're doing or not, and then to take that remedial action, should it be required, to get us closer to where we need to be. Remember that each of these objectives is designed to close that gap. Each of these objectives are the objectives we've decided are going to take us from where we are to where we want to be. And that's how you build your strategy into HubSpot. What happens if you don't close the adoption gap? Disaster. I can tell you this because we've seen it over and over again. People buy HubSpot, they don't do this work, they don't build the strategy into HubSpot, they don't use the control mechanisms in HubSpot, and HubSpot decays and gradually becomes used less and less, becomes less and less trusted. People start to work around it, they start to take shortcuts, management aren't using it to look at their metrics. It just becomes an expensive toy in the background of the business. Before long, HubSpot starts getting blamed for all the things that are going wrong. The data was wrong, the measures were wrong, this isn't accurate, that's not right, and HubSpot gets the blame. It's not HubSpot, clearly it's the way that you're using it. But what you usually do is decide you need a new CRM. Then you go through the pain, 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months, of introducing a new CRM, and guess what happens? That one isn't adopted either, and that one fails a year or so down the road. So you enter into this cycle of kind of boom and bust. You get really excited about a new CRM, everybody starts to use it, gradually decays, and you rip it out and replace it with something else. This is a hugely expensive and wasteful exercise, massively distracting, when all you needed to do was to close that adoption gap in the first place. Surely it's worth investing in that adoption gap, in closing that adoption gap, rather than repeating the same cycle over and over again of ripping and replacing your CRM system. If you're interested in finding out more about how we close the adoption gap, you can download our framework, and you can download our educational email series that'll show you how to do it. And please like and subscribe to the channel for more like this. You'll also find me talking about the adoption gap on LinkedIn and on Substack, on our podcast, HubSpot's Not a Strategy. And you can see links to all this goodness in the channel description and in the description of the video. Go and download those freebies, close your adoption gap, and come back for the next video. I see you again soon.